The massive space station called Harmony's Edge floated silently in the void between star systems. This wasn't just any ordinary day at the station. Emergency lights flashed red throughout the corridors as beings from across the galaxy rushed toward the main council chamber. Something big was happening, and every major species in the galaxy wanted their voice heard. Ambassador Veltar stood at the center of the enormous circular room, his 4 arms raised high to get everyone's attention. The Valonian was tall and elegant, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Around him, the chaos was incredible. 12 different alien species filled the chamber, each one talking, clicking, whistling, or telepathically shouting at the same time. The bug-like Kreetok were making angry clicking sounds with their mandibles. Their compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights as they waved their thin arms in frustration. On the other side of the room, the aquatic depth singers were creating haunting melodies that somehow conveyed deep worry and fear. Their translucent bodies pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that changed color with their emotions. Silence. Veltar's voice boomed through the chamber's translation system. We are here to discuss the human problem, and we will do so in an orderly fashion. The word human seemed to have a magical effect. Every conversation stopped. Every being in the room turned their attention to the center where Veltar stood. The fear in the room was so thick you could almost touch it. The Kreetok delegation moved forward first. Their leader, a particularly large insect with scarred exoskeleton, activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. The images that appeared made several species gasp in horror. Look at these weapons, the Kreetok leader chittered through the translator. The humans have created bombs that use the same energy as stars. They can destroy entire cities with a single device. But that's not the worst part. New images appeared showing human spacecraft. To most species in the galaxy, these ships looked terrifying and primitive at the same time. They were covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. Worse yet, they moved through space by literally tearing holes in reality itself. They travel faster than light by breaking the universe, another Kreetok added. What kind of species thinks that's a good idea? But the most disturbing evidence was yet to come. The hologram shifted to show recordings of human history. Battle after battle flashed before the Council's eyes. Humans fighting humans with increasingly deadly weapons, cities burning, armies clashing across continents. They fight their own kind, whispered a representative from the Peaceful Harmony Collective. How can a species survive if it constantly wars with itself? The depth singers began to speak, their melodic voices carrying across the chamber like a sad song. We have heard stories from the outer territories, their spokesperson sang. Human ships appear without warning in the darkest corners of space. Their crews work for months in conditions that would kill most of us within days. They seem to feel no exhaustion, no fear, no limits. One of the younger depth singers added, her voice to the song. We monitored their communications during a rescue mission. When their ship was damaged and losing air, the humans were laughing while facing death. The evidence kept piling up, each piece more disturbing than the last. The Council watched intercepted human entertainment broadcasts with growing horror. Humans throwing themselves out of aircraft with only fabric to slow their fall. Humans fighting each other in cages while crowds cheered. Humans racing vehicles at deadly speeds for fun. They create wars for entertainment, Veltar announced grimly. We have recorded something they call video games, where humans simulate combat and destruction. Children participate in these simulations. A gasp went through the chamber. Several species had evolved beyond all forms of conflict. The idea that any civilization would teach warfare to their young was beyond their understanding. The evidence session continued for hours. Human sports that looked like combat training. Human movies filled with violence and destruction. Human books celebrating warriors and battles. To the peaceful species of the galaxy, it painted a picture of the most dangerous civilization they had ever encountered. As the session drew to a close, Veltar looked around the chamber at the faces of fear staring back at him. Representatives from 12 species, each one more terrified than the last. The question before us today is simple, he announced. Are humans the greatest threat our galaxy has ever faced, or could they be our greatest protectors? Either way, we cannot ignore them any longer. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would be watched, studied, and very carefully approached. The galaxy had never encountered anything like them before, and no one knew what would happen next. The session ended with one chilling thought echoing through every mind in the chamber. Somewhere out there in the darkness of space, the humans were coming. Captain Lee Hanna was enjoying her morning coffee in the command center of the exploration vessel Endeavour when the communication officer suddenly sat up straight in his chair. Lieutenant Park Jinwoo had been monitoring deep space frequencies for months without hearing anything more exciting than background radiation. But today was different. "Captain, you need to hear this," Jinwoo said, his voice filled with excitement and confusion. "We're receiving a transmission on an unknown frequency. It's addressing us directly." Hana set down her coffee and walked over to the communication station. The message was playing on repeat, spoken in heavily accented English that sounded like it had been learned from old television broadcasts. "Greetings, human warriors. The Galactic Council extends invitation for diplomatic exchange. Please approach designated coordinates with minimal weapons display. We await your arrival with great respect." The entire bridge crew fell silent. After decades of searching for signs of intelligent life, first contact was finally happening. But something about the message felt strange. The pauses were too long, the word choices were odd, and there was something in the alien voice that sounded almost like fear. "Did they just call us warriors?" asked Chief Engineer Kim Soo-young from her station. Hana frowned as she listened to the message again. "And why are they asking us to minimize our weapons? The Endeavour is a science vessel. We barely have any weapons to begin with." Despite the strange wording, this was the moment humanity had been waiting for. Hana ordered her crew to prepare for humanity's first interstellar diplomatic mission. They would approach the given coordinates with their minimal defensive systems powered down to show peaceful intentions. The journey to the meeting point took 3 days. As they approached the designated location, the crew of the Endeavour saw something that took their breath away. A massive space station floated before them, easily 10 times the size of anything humans had ever built. It was beautiful and alien, with curved surfaces that seemed to flow like water frozen in time. But what really caught their attention were the ships surrounding the station. Dozens of alien vessels maintained positions around the structure in what was clearly a defensive formation. Some ships looked like living creatures made of metal and crystal. Others appeared to be pure energy contained in geometric shapes. A few looked like they had been grown rather than built. "That's a lot of firepower for a diplomatic meeting," muttered Security Chief Bae Min-seo. As the Endeavour approached the docking bay, Hana noticed that every alien ship had their weapons powered up, not aimed at them, but ready to fire at a moment's notice. It was like being invited to dinner by someone who kept a loaded gun on the table. The docking process was unlike anything they had prepared for. Instead of the simple mechanical clamps they expected, tendrils of energy reached out from the station and gently guided their shuttle into the bay. The technology was so advanced, it seemed like magic. When the shuttle's doors opened, Hana and her diplomatic team stepped into what looked like a reception hall designed for giants. The ceiling stretched impossibly high above them, and the walls were covered in patterns that seemed to shift and move when you weren't looking directly at them. But it was the reception committee that really caught their attention. Standing in a semicircle around the shuttle were representatives of species that human science fiction had never imagined. Hulking reptilian beings wore powered armor that hummed with energy. Floating creatures that appeared to be made of living light drifted, several feet off the ground. Humanoid figures with skin that shifted between liquid and solid states stood perfectly still. All of them were armed. All of them kept a respectful but noticeable distance from the human delegation. The welcoming ceremony was the most awkward, diplomatic event in human history. When a server approached to offer them refreshments, the poor creature was shaking so badly that the drinks sloshed in their containers. The alien bowed so low that his head nearly touched the floor, backing Away immediately after setting down the tray. Are we that scary? Whispered diplomatic attaché Yoon Hyun to Hana. The formal presentations began with a series of speeches from various alien dignitaries. Each one maintained at least 10 feet of distance from the human delegation while speaking. The translations came through their communication devices, but Hana could hear fear in every voice. We welcome the representatives of the warrior race that conquered death itself, announced one dignitary. We honor the species that turned suffering into strength, added another. Your reputation precedes you across the stars, said a third. Hana exchanged confused glances with her team. What reputation? Humans had never met any of these species before. How could they have a reputation? As the ceremony continued, the pieces began to fall into place. The aliens had been watching humanity from a distance, observing their behavior and drawing their own conclusions, but their interpretations were wildly different from human reality. When the aliens spoke of human endurance, they weren't talking about athletic achievements. They were describing what they saw as supernatural ability to survive in impossible conditions. When they mentioned human warfare, they interpreted humanity's history of conflict as evidence of a species bred for battle. The most disturbing revelation came when an alien dignitary mentioned the humans who laugh in the face of death. Hana realized they were talking about rescue workers, soldiers, and emergency responders who used humor to cope with dangerous situations. To the aliens, this looked like a species that found joy in mortal peril. By the end of the ceremony, Hana understood the truth. Humanity hadn't sought out this reputation as galactic warriors. Their natural resilience, competitive nature, and ability to find hope in dark situations had been observed and misinterpreted by species that had evolved very differently. The galaxy wasn't greeting humanity as fellow explorers seeking knowledge and friendship. They were welcoming what they believed to be the most dangerous species in the universe, and they were absolutely terrified of what humans might do next. As her shuttle prepared to return to the Endeavor, Hana looked back at the Alien Reception Committee. They were still maintaining their careful distances, still ready for trouble that would never come. She realized that humanity's greatest challenge wouldn't be learning to communicate with alien species. It would be convincing them that humans weren't the monsters they appeared to be. Dr. Park Min-ho stepped off the transport shuttle onto the surface of Valonia Prime, becoming the first human to set foot on an alien homeworld. The excitement was overwhelming, but so was the strange reception he received. Everywhere he looked, Valonian citizens were peeking at him from behind corners, whispering among themselves, and quickly looking away when he made eye contact. The Valonians were beautiful creatures, tall and graceful with 4 arms and skin that shimmered with rainbow colors when they moved. But Minho noticed something odd about their behavior. They moved slowly and carefully, always looking around before taking each step. When groups of them walked together, they formed protective circles with the youngest in the center. Dr. Zilnara, his Valonian host and fellow scientist, explained this behavior during their first meeting. We evolved from creatures that were hunted by many predators, she said, her voice soft and melodic. Our ancestors survived by working together, sharing resources, and avoiding conflict at all costs. Violence of any kind is completely foreign to our nature. This explanation would prove to be the key to understanding everything that followed. Minho's first cultural presentation was supposed to be a simple introduction to human society. He had prepared what he thought was a harmless slideshow about daily life on Earth. The Valonian audience of scientists and diplomats gathered in their beautiful crystal amphitheater, eager to learn about their mysterious visitors. The trouble started with his very first slide showing human sports. The image showed a football game with players tackling each other. To Minho, it was just entertainment. To the Valonians, it looked like ritualized combat training. Humans engage in physical conflict for pleasure, whispered one Valonian scientist to another. The next slide showed a basketball game. They compete to control territory and resources, observed Dr. Zilnara. Her skin flickering with colors that Minho was learning indicated deep concern. When Minho showed images of Olympic competitions, the Valonian audience fell completely silent. Humans throwing spears, racing at incredible speeds, lifting enormous weights and diving from great heights looked like training exercises for super soldiers. "Are these your warriors in preparation?" asked one brave Valonian. "No, no," Minho laughed, not realizing how his laughter sounded to creatures who rarely displayed such loud emotions. "These are just games. Humans compete for fun." The word fun seemed to terrify them even more. The idea that humans found joy in physical competition was completely alien to their prey animal psychology. Things got worse when Minho tried to explain human military training. He showed a video of soldiers doing obstacle courses, thinking it would demonstrate human fitness and teamwork. The Valonians watched in horror as humans crawled under barbed wire, climbed over walls, and carried heavy equipment across rough terrain. "Your entire species trains for warfare," concluded the head of the Valonian Science Council. "Even your young participate in these activities." Minho realized they were talking about physical education classes and youth sports, but his attempts to explain only made things worse. When he mentioned that human children played games like tag and hide and seek, the Valonians interpreted these as predator-prey training exercises. The cultural exchange took a dramatic turn when Minho encountered his first medical emergency on Valonia. A young Valonian child had fallen from a tree and broken her arm. The local medics were gently singing to the child and applying cooling salves, but they seemed afraid to actually touch the injury. Minho's medical training kicked in immediately. He carefully examined the break, set the bone, and created a simple splint using materials from his kit. To him, it was basic first aid that any human with medical knowledge would provide. To the Valonians watching, they witnessed something terrifying. A member of a warrior species was casually manipulating bone and flesh with disturbing expertise. His gentle bedside manner and reassuring words were interpreted as the calculated behavior of a predator who understood anatomy because he knew how to cause damage. When the child's parents asked how he learned these skills, Minho made a fatal mistake. "I studied medicine in medical school," he explained. "We learned anatomy by practicing on cadavers." The translation of cadavers as dead bodies sent shockwaves through the Valonian medical community. They believed Minho was describing warrior training academies where humans learned to heal so they could more effectively harm their enemies. The idea that humans practiced medicine on the dead convinced them that humanity had no respect for life itself. Word of the incident spread across Valonia faster than Minho could control. His innocent explanation became the stuff of nightmares for a species that had never encountered violence in their evolutionary history. His subsequent cultural presentations became legendary throughout Valonian space, but not in the way he intended. When he showed videos of humans mountain climbing, the Valonians saw super soldier training in impossible terrain. Scuba diving looked like preparation for underwater warfare. Skydiving was obviously training for aerial combat drops. Human literature and movies were perhaps the worst evidence of all. Stories of heroes overcoming obstacles, defeating villains, and surviving impossible odds convinced the Valonians that humans indoctrinated their children through violent propaganda. When Minho mentioned that human children read books about warriors, knights, and superheroes, the Valonian Education Council began questioning everything they thought they knew about childhood development. The final straw came when Minho casually mentioned that humans keep dogs and cats as pets. The Valonians researched these creatures and discovered that both were descended from predators. The idea that humans domesticated hunters and kept them in their homes as companions was the most terrifying evidence yet that humanity was a species of apex predators. Within days of this revelation, the Valonian Council began drafting emergency evacuation protocols for their outer colonies. If humans kept predators as family members, what did that say about human nature itself? Dr. Zilnara came to Minho's laboratory one evening, her skin displaying the deep purple patterns that indicated extreme distress. "We have made a terrible mistake," she said quietly. "We invited a species of super predators to study us, and now they know everything about our weaknesses." Minho tried desperately to explain that humans weren't the monsters the Valonians believed them to be. but every piece of evidence seemed to confirm their worst fears. His genuine concern for their well-being was interpreted as strategic analysis. His friendly behavior was seen as the calculated approach of a hunter studying its prey. As he prepared his reports for Earth, Minho realized that humanity's reputation in the galaxy wasn't based on lies or misunderstandings. It was based on the truth about human nature, filtered through the psychology of species that had evolved very differently. To creatures that had never known conflict, humans looked like the most dangerous beings in the universe. The question now was whether humanity could overcome this reputation, or if they were destined to be forever feared across the stars. The news traveled through the galaxy's communication networks like wildfire spreading through dry grass. What started as simple reports about humanity's first diplomatic contacts quickly transformed into something far more terrifying with each transmission across the stars. On the trading hub of Nexus Station, a Valonian merchant named Kithara was sharing his experience with a group of fellow traders over their evening meal. "I saw one of them myself," he said, his forearms gesturing dramatically. The human healer touched broken bone and twisted flesh like it was nothing. No fear, no hesitation. By the time his story reached the Crystalline Collective 3 days later, it had changed significantly. "The humans can manipulate living tissue with their bare hands," the report stated. "They show no emotional response to injury or death." A week later, when the tale reached the Outer Rim territories, it had transformed again. "Human warriors can reshape bone and muscle at will. They are immune to pain and cannot be permanently injured." This pattern repeated itself countless times, across thousands of worlds. Each species added their own fears and interpretations to the growing legend of humanity. The galaxy's communication network, designed to share information quickly across vast distances, became the perfect tool for spreading terror. The Kretok, with their insect-like psychology, were particularly susceptible to panic. Their hive mind nature meant that when one colony became afraid, the fear spread instantly to connected colonies across their territory. Within a month, entire Kretok sectors were broadcasting warnings about the death-immune warrior species that had emerged from the unknown regions of space. The economic impact was immediate and devastating. On the Galactic Trade Exchange, stock prices plummeted as investors rushed to sell anything connected to sectors that might attract human attention. Shipping companies began avoiding routes that passed anywhere near human space, even though no human ships had been spotted in those areas. Insurance companies stopped offering policies for cargo traveling through what they called the human zone. The cost of doing business in that region of space increased by 300% overnight, not because of any actual human threat, but because of pure fear. Commander Kim Suman had no idea that her routine patrol mission would become the most infamous military engagement in galactic history. Her destroyer, the Soul's Pride, was conducting a standard security sweep near the edge of human space when they received a distress call. A Kretok merchant vessel was under attack by pirates, and they were requesting immediate assistance. "All hands to battle stations," Suman announced calmly to her crew. "We have a pirate engagement, standard anti-piracy protocol." The engagement that followed was textbook human military tactics, the kind of operation that human naval academies had been teaching for decades. Suman's crew executed a coordinated three-pronged attack. Fighter squadrons disabled the pirate ship's engines, electronic warfare specialists jammed their communications, and marine boarding parties secured the vessels. The entire operation lasted exactly 9 minutes and 43 seconds. No human casualties, minimal damage to the merchant vessel, and all pirates captured alive for trial. It was considered a routine success by human military standards, but to the Kretok crew who witnessed the engagement, they had seen something impossible. The rescued merchant captain Zekthar later described the battle to his colony's military council. "The human warriors moved as one mind," he chittered in amazement. "Their fighter craft attacked in perfect synchronization, as if controlled by a single consciousness. No individual could coordinate such precise timing." What the Kretok didn't understand was human military communication and training. The coordinated attack they witnessed was the result of months of practice, advanced communication systems, and standardized tactical procedures. To humans, it was professional competence. To insects who communicated through pheromones and hive mind connections, it looked like supernatural coordination. The most disturbing part of Zekthar's account came when he described the human Marines boarding the pirate vessels. They showed no fear of death, he reported. One of their warriors was actually making sounds of joy during the combat. The sounds of joy he was referring to came from Sergeant Cho Young-ho, a veteran Marine who had a habit of cracking jokes during tense situations to keep his squad's morale up. His nervous laughter and casual comments during the boarding action were his way of staying calm under pressure. To the Kretok observers, it looked like a warrior species that experienced pleasure during combat. The story spread through Kretok, space at the speed of their quantum communication network. Within hours, every Kretok colony had heard about the humans who fought with hive mind precision and laughed while facing death. But the story didn't stop there. As it passed from the Kretok to other species, it grew more terrifying with each telling. The aquatic depth singers interpreted the account through their own understanding of pack hunting behavior. The humans are collective predators, their report concluded. They coordinate attacks through methods unknown to galactic science and derive sustenance from conflict itself. When the story reached the energy-based Lumina Collective, they added their own fearful interpretation. These beings have achieved perfect unity of purpose while maintaining individual consciousness. They have evolved beyond the limitations that constrain other species. By the time the tale reached the Outer Rim territories, it had transformed into something unrecognizable. The humans had become immortal hive mind warriors who reproduced through combat and considered warfare a form of religious worship. Trade. Routes that had operated safely for centuries were abandoned overnight. Entire colonies began evacuation procedures, convinced that the human war machine was expanding across the galaxy. The Galactic Stock Exchange crashed as panic selling reached levels not seen since the last Great War. Commander Su Min learned about her newfound reputation when she docked at a neutral station for routine supplies. The station master, a normally confident Valonian administrator, approached her with obvious terror. "Commander," he said, his voice shaking, "we are honored by your presence, but we must ask, are you here for conquest or for trade?" Suman stared at him in confusion. "I'm here to buy coffee and fresh vegetables. What are you talking about?" The misunderstanding was so complete, so fundamental, that neither side could bridge the gap. Humanity's natural teamwork, humor in stressful situations, and professional military competence had been transformed into evidence of a species that defied every assumption about how intelligent life should behave. Back on Earth, military analysts were baffled by the reports coming in from space. "Sir," reported Intelligence Officer Lee Daeho to his commanding general, "the aliens seem to think we're some kind of unstoppable warrior species. Trade has stopped, and there are rumors of evacuation protocols being activated across 3 sectors. "What did we do?" asked the general. "As far as I can tell, sir, we rescued some merchants from pirates and said thank you when they offered us hospitality. The galaxy's fear of humanity had taken on a life of its own, growing far beyond anything based in reality. The question now was whether humanity could control this reputation, or if they would be forever trapped by the legends they never meant to create." In the Outer Rim territories, entire civilizations were making plans based on the assumption that humanity was expanding across the galaxy with conquest in mind. The truth was far more mundane, but in a galaxy paralyzed by fear, the truth seemed to matter less than the legend. The announcement came through every major communication channel in the galaxy simultaneously. The Sarkonian Empire, conquerors of a dozen peaceful civilizations, had set their sights on humanity's small corner of space. Their message was broadcast in multiple languages, but the meaning was crystal clear. The Sarkonian Empire hereby claims all territories currently occupied by the species known as humans. You have 30 standard days to evacuate your worlds and submit to imperial authority. Resistance will result in complete annihilation. Across the galaxy, every species held their breath. The Sarkonians were the closest thing to a traditional military empire that existed in modern galactic civilization. They had evolved from apex predators, unlike most other species, and their culture celebrated conquest and domination. Their technology was advanced, their fleets were massive, and their military record was flawless. Most species expected humanity to do what every other civilization had done when faced with Sarkonian expansion: negotiate a surrender, evacuate their worlds, or beg the Galactic Council for protection. After all, despite their terrifying reputation, humans were still a young species with primitive technology and limited resources. President Choi Ji-ho's response came exactly 24 hours later. The message was broadcast on the same channels the Sarkonians had used, and it was remarkably brief. To the Sarkonian Empire, we have received your declaration of war. We accept your terms. See you soon. The simplicity of the response sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. No negotiations, no pleas for mercy, no attempts at diplomatic solutions. The humans had just accepted a war against the galaxy's most powerful military force, with the casual tone of someone accepting a dinner invitation. Emergency sessions convened on every major world. Species that had been terrified of humanity suddenly found themselves in the strange position of being concerned for human survival. The Valonians, despite their fear, offered humanitarian aid for human refugees. The Kretak Collective began calculating evacuation routes for human colonies, but the humans weren't evacuating. Instead, they were doing something that puzzled every military analyst in the galaxy. They were preparing to fight. The first Sarkonian fleet arrived at the human colony world of New Busan, expecting to find either an empty planet or a surrendering population. What they found instead was a system bristling with defensive installations, mining ships converted into attack vessels, and civilian transports that had been turned into missile platforms. Admiral Vextor of the Sarkonian Third Fleet looked at his tactical display with growing confusion. "These aren't military vessels," he growled to his subordinates. "They've turned cargo haulers into warships." What the Sarkonians were seeing was humanity's greatest strength in action: the ability to adapt and improvise under impossible circumstances. With limited time and resources, human engineers had transformed their entire civilian fleet into a fighting force. Ore haulers became missile boats, passenger ships became troop transports, and research vessels became electronic warfare platforms. The battle for New Busan lasted 3 days and shocked every military observer in the galaxy. The human defenders didn't try to match Sarkonian firepower directly. Instead, they used tactics that no professional military academy would ever teach. Human ships deliberately rammed Sarkonian vessels after evacuating their crews in escape pods. Mining explosives were used as improvised bombs. Civilian volunteers piloted damaged ships on suicide runs to take out enemy command vessels. It was chaotic, desperate, and completely effective. Lieutenant Yoon Jae-hyun, piloting a converted mining ship, found himself facing a Sarkonian battlecruiser 20 times his size. Instead of retreating, he flew straight at the enemy vessel while broadcasting on all channels, "If we're going down, we're taking you with us." His ship's mining laser, never designed for combat, somehow managed to penetrate the battlecruiser's shields and detonate its ammunition storage. The explosion took out 3 other Sarkonian vessels and opened a gap in their formation that human fighters immediately exploited. To the Sarkonian military, raised on concepts of honor, strategy, and proper military conduct, the human approach looked insane. To human defenders fighting for their homes and families, it was simply doing whatever it took to win. The turning point came when Captain Nam Hyejin, commanding a jury-rigged battle group of converted civilian ships, managed to capture a Sarkonian admiral alive. Instead of executing him or demanding his surrender, she did something completely unexpected. She gave him medical treatment and asked him why the Sarkonians wanted to conquer human space. The conversation that followed changed everything. Admiral Vextor, expecting torture or interrogation, found himself in a philosophical debate about the nature of conquest and civilization. Captain Nam's genuine curiosity about Sarkonian culture and her respectful treatment of prisoners confused him more than any military tactic. You fight like madmen, but treat prisoners like honored guests, he told her. What kind of warriors are you? We're not warriors, Nam replied. We're just people trying to protect our homes. Word of these encounters spread through the Sarkonian fleet faster than battle reports. The idea that humans could be both terrifyingly effective in combat and genuinely compassionate to defeated enemies was completely foreign to their understanding of warfare. The war lasted 6 months, and by the EU and the galaxy had witnessed something unprecedented. Humanity had defeated the Sarkonian Empire not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through sheer stubborn refusal to give up combined with an ability to find creative solutions to impossible problems. The final battle took place in Earth's solar system, where the last Sarkonian fleet made a desperate attempt to destroy humanity's homeworld. They found themselves facing not just human military forces, but converted sports stadiums serving as fighter bases, commercial satellites turned into weapons platforms, and civilian volunteers in everything from pleasure craft to scientific research vessels. When the Sarkonian Emperor finally agreed to peace talks, he did so not because he had been defeated in traditional military terms, but because his forces could no longer comprehend what they were fighting against. Every ship we destroy, they build 2 more from scrap metal and spare parts, he reported to his war council. Every tactic we use, they counter with something no military manual has ever described. They fight like they enjoy impossible odds. The peace treaty that followed surprised everyone. Instead of demanding tribute or territory, humanity asked for cultural exchange programs and trade agreements. They offered to share their improvisational engineering techniques in exchange for Sarkonian knowledge of large-scale manufacturing. The galaxy watched these negotiations with amazement. The species they had feared as unstoppable warriors were revealing themselves to be exactly what they had always claimed: explorers, scientists, and builders who only became fighters when they had no other choice. But the reputation remained, and humanity began to understand its value. When the Depth Singers faced invasion from an unknown aggressive species, they sent a simple message to Earth. Would humanity consider a mutual defense treaty? Similar requests came from dozens of peaceful civilizations. Species that had once feared human contact now sought human protection. The mere possibility that humans might respond to threats against their allies was enough to deter most potential aggressors. President Choi Ji-ho, reflecting on humanity's new role in galactic politics, realized what had happened. We didn't become the galaxy's protectors because we're the strongest, he told his cabinet. We became protectors because we're the only species crazy enough to fight when fighting seems hopeless. The galaxy had learned that humans possessed something most advanced civilizations had lost in their evolution toward peace and prosperity: the absolute refusal to accept defeat. In a universe full of ancient, wise, and peaceful species, that stubborn determination was exactly the kind of terrifying reputation humanity needed. Their legend had become their shield, protecting not just themselves, but every civilization that chose to stand with them.